Right, shall we make a start? 'Cause it's about 3 minutes past, so there are people still trickling in, but we will record. And let me just check that I am recording. I think I am. Yeah. So we will record, and we'll put this on the website, and I'll send an email out to everybody that attends anyway with the recording and various resources. So even if people are a bit late, then they'll still be able to see everything, and hopefully still engage with questions and things at the end. So what we're going to talk about today is basically all around cleaning, hygiene and safety, and we're using the ukactive Fit Together guidance as a bit of a signpost for this. Some of you that are on may have engaged with other stuff I've done, articles and other webinars, and my core message hasn't really changed. The main difference now is that it's not just me saying it because it's best practice. It's actually ukactive have kind of supported what I've been saying as well, which is good, but it gives a bit of a framework to at least go into some more of the detail, whereas before it was kind of relatively high level stuff. So make sure this works. There's two parts to the webinar. Part one, basically, we're going to run through what the ukactive guidance actually says. We're going to talk about why cleanliness and hygiene are important. We're going to talk about what the requirements actually mean practically, and therefore how you should go about implementing them. Just adding someone in. A few things, thoughts on what you can do to make life a bit easier to do that, and how me and my business can potentially help you. And then part two, which is optional, is a bit more detail about how we can potentially help and how to progress that if it's of interest. Feel free to ask questions at any time. There will be a couple of slots for questions, but always feel free to jump in if anything's not clear. It might be that I say, "Oh, I'm going to cover that in a minute," but if not, happy to answer questions. So if you don't know me, this is kind of what I do. I like this image because it kind of brings it home. It's all about helping people to go from buildings not looking very good, being kind of unhygienic and risky from the perspective of slips, to being clean, safe and hygienic. And of late, we've been doing a lot of work in the context of the virus to help clean entire buildings, not just floors. So we used to very much focus in on floor safety and hygiene and cleanliness. So in leisure facilities, it would often be changing rooms and poolsides and things, whereas now we're doing a lot more work in other areas and on other surfaces as well, because of everything that's been going on. To give you an idea, some of the operators that we work with, and then we also work with a number of insurers, brokers, and then they're not here, but we also work with solicitors as well, and principally those that deal with insurance claims. So we've got quite a lot of knowledge in that. And my strong belief is that this is going to be the new battleground for members. So I think that whilst in the past, as we'll see, cleanliness has been important for members, I think now it's much more important, and there's an opportunity here to really push on and do well if you can deliver on this area and get more members in through the doors. So first bit, what does the guidance actually say then? So you may well have read it, but just in case, the headlines are that there are 6 key measures which are kind of minimum benchmarks, minimum commitments that ukactive have set out, and one of those is about cleanliness and hygiene, and it says it's about reducing the risk of viral transmission from surfaces and equipment. Below that, they've got 4 bullet points. So ensure rigorous cleaning and disinfection regimes throughout the facility. Ensure regular cleaning of high contact touch points throughout the facility during opening. Provide access for staff and users to antibacterial wipes, sprays and sanitisers. And lastly, to enforce equipment wipe down pre and post workout and during where required. And this is in addition to the cleaning schedule. So that's what it says. And obviously, if you were reading that whole document as I did the first time, you know, I suppose any of these points, but here in particular, it could be quite easy to gloss over all of this. But actually, there's quite a lot of detail caught in those few bullet points, and actually quite a high burden of outcome that's expected of you when you start to get into it. So a bit of background then, more holistically, why are cleanliness and hygiene important? Well, cleanliness has actually always been important for 5 key areas of your business. I'll just run through those quickly. Firstly, it's been important for new membership sales. So there's data to say that membership sales are likely to be better if clubs are clean, and actually cleanliness is more important than price. Location is always the most important thing. Cleanliness has always been important for your overall revenue and top line. So there's data from the States showing that if you're in the top quartile of investment in cleanliness, your average revenue per member is almost 2.5 times a club in the bottom 25% of investment in cleanliness. So in other words, the more you invest in getting cleanliness right, the greater your revenues are. It's always been important when it comes to safety. So the biggest cause in the past of personal injury claims in the leisure sector is slips, which is a third of claims in 2019, according to the government data. And cleaning regimes are a key component of why somebody might slip, which results in a personal injury claim. And the average cost of one of those claims is about £10,000. Cleanliness has always been important for retention. So using some URSA data, the average club in the UK, if you said, you know, it's 2,000 members at £500 a year with 45% attrition, 10% of that is down to cleanliness. So that's 45k a year of lost revenue down to cleanliness. And it's always been important for profit. So using the Sport England NBS data, we can see that there's a correlation between cleanliness, customer experience, net promoter score, and profit. So as this article, which was in one of the magazines, I can't remember which, says, you know, the dirtier the club, the lower the profit. So it kind of backs up from the revenue, you know, what was said from a revenue perspective. But revenue's great, but profit's what it's all about really at the end of the day. But now I would say it's no longer important, it's vital. And if you look up the definition of vital, one of the definitions is indispensable to the continuance of life. And I honestly believe that we've got to that point now, both obviously from the perspective of we've got to keep people safe on a personal level, but actually what I'm talking about here is, you know, if clubs aren't going to take this seriously and deliver on what they need to, I don't see them being in business for the long term. It's not just me saying that. There's a guy quite prominently in the States called Blaine McHaney. He's been on a lot of podcasts and vlogs, and he's saying people are now cleaning as if their business's life depended on it, because it does. And he's also saying, you know, that you can't ever expect now to go back to where we were. We've got to stay on top of this moving forward. And I think that's the new reality. During the lockdown, there was a big survey done of 63,000 plus members, and over 57,000 of them said that cleanliness was very important to their feeling safe to return to their club. So over 90%. Now that's a much bigger proportion than you would have had before. So that shows the shift in the importance of this to members. And if you look at the historic situation, we, as a sector as a whole, we haven't been delivering on customers' expectations. So if you look again at the Sport England data, year in and year out, you get the same results, which is that customers rank cleanliness of activity spaces and changing rooms as the first and second most important thing to them. And they always rank those two items as the 10th and 11th or thereabouts in terms of the satisfaction. So in other words, there's a big gap between expectation and reality. And if you think about it logically, if members thought that their facilities were perfectly clean and couldn't be improved in any way, shape or form, then you probably wouldn't find 91% of them saying that cleanliness is very important to them feeling safe to return, because it would be a given. They wouldn't even be thinking about it. but the fact that the vast majority of people are thinking about it suggests that, you know, this data here is backing up the point that they're concerned about it. The other thing to think about is we're going to see a new world in terms of insurance claims as well. So AIRMIC is the UK Insurance and Risk Management Association. They've got a podcast, and on that podcast there was an episode recently about insurance claims following the pandemic. And the very first thing that they talked about was cleaning and hygiene related claims. So these are going to happen, and we need to be mindful of that. So we're thinking not only about getting things up to the right standard so that things look okay and people feel safe, but also that we can defend ourselves in the event of any claims, whether those are personal injury type claims or whether it's any sort of criminal prosecution. And there is a legal obligation, as I'm sure you know, to provide a safe facility under the Health and Safety at Work Act. And then from the perspective of any criminal prosecutions, so something like there was a case recently where Tesco was fined 733,000 for somebody slipping over in one of their stores. That was a criminal prosecution by the HSE. One of the key points in that within the sentencing guidelines from the courts are that if people don't put in place measures that are recognised standards in the industry, then they're going to be found highly culpable for any offences. So now we've got this framework from ukactive, you know, from a legal perspective, if nothing else, we need to make sure we're following it. So what do the requirements actually mean? So let's try and break them down and put a bit of depth to them. So the first one is ensure rigorous cleaning and disinfection regimes throughout the facility. So the first thing I pulled out of this is rigorous cleaning and disinfection, and this is the point that I've been banging on about for some time if you've been following any of my stuff. Disinfection is only effective if a surface is thoroughly cleaned first. So you can't disinfect a surface that's dirty, whether that's dust, whether that's oil, whether that's ingrained dirt within tiles of shower walls, whether it's talcum powder, whatever it is. If a surface is dirty, you cannot disinfect it. So ukactive is saying you've got to be disinfected. That means you've got to be doing a very good clean first. And we did a big article about this, which has proved quite popular, about coronavirus deep cleaning and disinfection more generally. Most areas of leisure facilities should be straightforward to clean and disinfect, albeit it's going to take time, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. Some parts of clubs, not all clubs, you know, not all clubs are as bad as these examples, but you know, this is fairly common, I would say, to be honest, in changing rooms and barefoot areas across the industry. It's going to take a lot more work, because again, you can't achieve what ukactive is saying is a minimum expectation of disinfecting until you've cleaned these surfaces, and these sorts of areas are going to take longer. And it talks about regimes as well. So in other words, this isn't a one and done. So they're not saying you've got to have a deep clean now and be clean and disinfected to open and then crack on and do what you like. They're saying that the expectation is this is a regime, so we're going to be staying on top of it and maintaining it over time. The other thing they're saying is throughout the facility. So, you know, we've got to be cleaning and disinfecting everywhere. That's how I would interpret this. And again, it needs to be clean in order to be disinfected. Now, of course, if you're not opening your swimming pool in the short term, then you don't need to worry about doing that area because nobody's going to be going in there. But as and when these areas are opened up to member use, this needs to be done. The second point is about providing access for both staff and users to antibacterial wipe sprays and sanitisers. It's important to note here the difference between cleaning, which is the removal of soiling, and then once that's been done, you can sanitise, which is reducing bacteria and germs, or disinfecting, which is removing. So we're talking here about sanitising. So giving access to products or systems that will reduce the level of bacteria, germs, and viruses that are prevalent on surfaces. And I would strongly advise you to get advice on this, but my personal view is I wouldn't be giving spray bottles for members to use, because I think that there's just too much risk associated with that in terms of, what are they spraying? Do they accidentally spray themselves in the face or spray someone else or whatever? Whereas wipes are a more foolproof option. So I would personally suggest that you give wipes to members to use. Speaking of that, they're talking about enforcing equipment wipe down pre and post workout and during if needed, and that's on top of the cleaning regime. So this to me is all about the members taking more of an active part in helping you guys to keep the facilities clean. And I do think that this is the best chance we're going to get to get members on board with helping us, because everybody's aware of the problems, everybody's aware of the challenges, and if they're not going to do it now, then they're never going to do it in the future. So I think now's the time to try and capitalize on this and get members engaged. So we should be trying to look at it as working together with the members. One of the challenges is going to be, and we'll talk about this maybe a bit later, is what happens if members don't want to do that. So we need to think about that. But I think on the whole, people will do this. And then it talks about ensuring regular cleaning of high contact touch points throughout the facility. So again, we're talking about during opening hours, we're talking about regular cleaning. So that suggests that we're not cleaning things at night and then leaving it through during the day. We're re-cleaning and re-cleaning. So again, there's quite a big burden on operators here to fulfill here. And I was actually sort of pleasantly surprised from the perspective that it is going down the definite best practice route, but I was a bit surprised that they would go so strongly. So this needs careful planning and communication. So how are you going to do that? So are you going to close an area every 2 hours for 15 minutes cleaning? Are you going to do a schedule where every machine gets done in turn as it gets used, and you work on a cycle? There's all sorts of different ways of doing it. I'm just going to open the chat here. Craig replied in the chat. Craig's asked, actually, is there a difference between rigorous clean and a deep clean? Well, that's an interesting point, isn't it? Again, I would say that I think what they're saying is a rigorous regime of cleaning. So that to me means both. Rigorous means both that it's done properly and that it's done regularly. That's how I would interpret rigorous myself. And Craig has dropped me a note privately as well to say actually that in a couple of other countries they're suggesting that customers aren't cleaning up after themselves. So I think that's really valuable feedback to think about, prepare for what's going to happen in that event. And I think maybe some difficult, challenging conversations might need to be had, because I think if you allow that to happen, if you've got one or two bad apples that aren't doing that, then I think you need to try and stamp that out as quickly as you can and try and get this done, because otherwise it's just going to be commercially almost impossible for you to be cleaning every single machine after everybody's used it. I think you just can't do that as an operator. I can't see how commercially you can make that work. So how can we go about implementing these requirements? So again, there's a difference between disinfection and deep cleaning, as we've said. Disinfection is simple, but it takes time. Deep cleaning is much more difficult and it's going to take longer. On disinfection, the dwell time is critical. So if you look on the bottle of your disinfectant spray or your wipe or whatever it is, it'll say kills 99.99% of X, Y, and Z based on a 2-minute dwell time, contact time, or a 10-minute contact time, or whatever it might be. If it says 10 minutes and you spray it on and wipe it off after 30 seconds, you haven't disinfected anything. So you need to make sure you're following the process. And that's where this becomes time consuming, because you need to be giving the product, the system, the right amount of time to work. And it requires you to be quite diligent and meticulous. In terms of cleaning, I think, you've got to really be questioning the process and asking yourself, is it really working? So, are the chemicals you've got effective on the surfaces that you have to clean? Is the equipment you've got actually effective? So things like the traditional blue deck brushes that you would see all the time on pool sides, in my experience, they're a bit of a waste of time at cleaning anything. They're not really designed to clean much. So you'd be better off with, a softer brush or some sort of pad on a deck scrubber than one of those brushes. And the requirement for this is going to vary by area. So this is just an example here. But if you start at the top, your reception, it's going to be quite easy to deep clean. It's not going to take very long to deep clean. It's quite easy to disinfect, and it's going to take a decent amount of time to disinfect because you've got nooks and crannies and different areas and things like that. A studio, conversely, is going to be quite easy to do because it's not going to be that dirty. There aren't, it's a big open area, and therefore the speed of disinfecting it is going to be, in relative terms, pretty quick. Once you get into a gym space with equipment, again, probably not going to be that dirty. So the deep clean's quite easy, but it is going to take time because you've got to go in all the nooks and crannies and around all the equipment. And the same, the disinfection is going to take a long time because you've got to get into every bit. And then if you get into a changing room or showers, the deep clean is going to be much more difficult. It's going to take much more time. But conversely, the disinfection part of it is a bit quicker. So it's all kind of balancing out with one another. But you need to think about the fact that different areas are going to take different amounts of time. Paul has just put a comment in the chat saying that the difficult conversations we may need to have with members is a great example of why communication skills are going to be more important than ever in our industry. Yeah, absolutely. I think a big part of this whole piece around cleanliness and hygiene is around the communication as well. And I would certainly be suggesting that you are documenting, taking photographs and videos of all the cleaning and the disinfection and all this stuff that you're doing, particularly if it's pre-opening or out of hours when you're open, and communicating that to the members, because that will give them more confidence. So you need to know if what you're doing is working or not. So what I suggest is basically figuring out where you are, trying something, and then testing it under some rigor to see if it's actually worked or not. If it hasn't, keep trying and iterate until you find something that is working. Once you've found something that works, then you crack on. Question here: do we have to provide showers or changing areas, and should we tell people to come ready? I think the guidance from what I've seen from, say, Swim England is about coming beach ready, I think it is. And I think what they've done in Guernsey is people are arriving in their workout gear, or if they're swimming, they're arriving with their costumes on and they're swimming, and then they're going in to change after that and only using communal showers. So I think it's just thinking about what you can make work with the vagaries of social distancing and how your facility is set out, because one-way systems might be much easier to implement in one facility than another, for example. So what I think people should be doing, and I know Craig, who's on the call, would agree, is doing a walk. So start at the front door and walk through and figure out, what does that customer journey look like, and what can you do and what can't you do that's practical and reasonable. I think that's got to be the way to do it. In terms of if cleaning is working or not, you can measure this, and I call this 3D cleanliness. So I talk about standards of cleaning. So this is more subjective. So how does it look? How does it feel? So, a sticky tabletop in a cafe, that's not very clean. And how do areas smell, which is quite visceral. From a hygiene perspective, you can quantify the amount of organic matter and bacteria and stuff on a surface as well. And the other way of looking at it from a floor perspective is you can measure how slip resistant to floor surfaces, because what you'll find is you can tick the box of standards, but you might not necessarily tick the box of hygiene or slip safety. So we can see a floor that looks clean but is slippery, or we can see a door handle that looks clean but is unhygienic. The three don't always go hand in glove, so you need to be thinking about trying to go a bit deeper into this. The analogy I've been using is testing your pool levels. Now that you would just do automatically because you want some sort of scientific proof of what you're doing. But if you go back to pre-pandemic times when it comes to cleanliness, how many operators of leisure facilities, or indeed operators of retail businesses or hotels or whatever, would be measuring the hygiene levels of their surfaces? Probably very few, but I think that's the way we need to go. And I think at least in leisure, we've got that analogous situation of the pool levels. So we kind of know, that there's a benefit there of monitoring stuff from a safety perspective. And that's, I think, what people need to be doing when it comes to cleanliness and hygiene. It's all about giving proof, I suppose, going back to what we said about the legal side of things. There's a product out called Fresh Check, which I think is something you guys should have a look at. It's a spray bottle, and basically when you spray it onto a surface, it will change colour or not, depending on how dirty the surface is. So it gives you a visual indication of, directionally, if you're working in the right way. So let's say you were at home and you've got a chopping board and you just chopped up some chicken and chucked it in the pot. If you sprayed that product onto the chopping board, it would change colour and show you that there was organic matter on the surface. If you then cleaned it and disinfected it and sprayed it again, it wouldn't change colour because it's clean. So this is a really good, quick, easy, foolproof way of seeing if something is working or not. And I think it's got a use both for now to make sure you're getting things right, but also in the future. So I think, you could see a scenario where a member says this isn't very clean, and you could actually demonstrate using this that it is. So there could be a benefit there. I'm trying to work with them and with SimSpa and ukactive and so on to see if we can do some sort of deal for the industry, because I just think it's that important to get this right. But in the meantime, you can get a bit of a discount if you want to buy some, if you put a code in SSS on their website. In terms of cleaning regimes, how to implement a cleaning regime, this is the model that I would recommend, and it's called ROTAs, so it's an acronym. R is regularity, so how frequently are we cleaning areas? O is for organisation, so do we know what outcome we're looking to achieve? And do we have a system in place and a process of monitoring that and managing it so that it gets done properly? T is time, so this is physically allowing enough time to do the job. So how many times have I gone to a health club and asked, okay, well, how long do you get to clean the poolside? Oh, we get 10 minutes once a week. Well, you cannot keep a poolside clean in 10 minutes once a week. You cannot clean a changing village in 15 minutes at the end of a shift. It's allowing enough time to do the process properly. A is ability, so this is all about the staff who are delivering this. So are they trained? Are they motivated? Are they experienced? And S is system, so are we kitting them out with the right stuff? So are we giving them the right equipment? Are we giving them the right products that actually are effective and will do the job? And all of these things are intertwined. But if you get all of these things right, that's how you'll get a good cleaning regime, and how you can actually achieve the benchmarks that ukactive have set. Dean in the comments mentioned about changing cubicles and stuff, that booking activities and booking a cubicle could be a good way to go. So you can know who's in what areas when, and then you can clean between sessions and things. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So how long is this going to take? I think probably longer than you think. And again, going back to the start, you can read 4 or 5 bullet points and gloss over it and think, well, that's easy, that's a given. But in reality, this is not cleaning as the industry has known it before. It's a 2-part process, and it's going to take time. To give you an idea, if you've got a sort of a city-sized gym, I think you probably need 6 people for a couple of days to do a proper clean and then disinfect everything, bearing in mind all the time that takes. A local authority, kind of average local authority, wet-sized facility, is probably 6 people for 6 days. A good chunk of that time is going to be doing the cleaning work in the barefoot and wet areas of the clubs. So if you're not opening those areas now, you could probably do it much more quickly to get open what you need to get open. We've produced a calculator on our website, so that will help you to figure out how much time you need to allocate. So if you visit that page and you enter in, reception is 100 square meters and changing rooms are 300 square meters and so on and so forth, we'll send you a plan of how many hours you need to allocate. So in terms of, recapping what we said in terms of the process, it's really thorough deep clean to remove contamination. Then it's a disinfection, and it's a maintenance and monitoring. And so that rotas model I mentioned is going to be key to getting this right. In terms of basic kit, cloths, microfiber cloths I'd suggest, and different colours for colour coding purposes, so you're not doing cross-contamination. Spray bottles and chemicals, obviously, the right chemicals that are going to be effective, both for the cleaning part and the disinfection part, mops and buckets. And then you're going to benefit, particularly in bigger clubs, from some kind of mechanical help as well. So probably some sort of floor scrubbing machine, and that type of machine, a buffer like that could be used on pretty much any floor. You just change the attachment on the bottom, but you can clean carpets, hard floors, pool sides, studios, anything with that. And then a wet vacuum would probably be useful as well, just to save time and speed up the process. Something to be aware of, just because a chemical or a piece of equipment or even a cleaning company says we do this, doesn't necessarily mean that they did it well or effectively. So just as an example, if you Google degreaser, there are 14 million results. And I can tell you over the years, I've seen hundreds of degreasers, and some of them don't seem to degrease anything at all, but they say degreaser on the bottle. So, you can't just take it as read. In other words, you need some proof that what you've got is actually going to work. So, if you've got a supplier, get them in and get them to do a sample area, going back to that diagram I had earlier about try something, test it out, has it worked or not, put it under some scrutiny. The last thing you want to do is buy loads of poolside descaling chemical and send a team in of your staff and go around and scrub the whole poolside floor, and then find when you finish that it doesn't look any different because the chemical wasn't good enough, for example. Other things to consider, PPE, and that isn't the PPE you need, just to be clear, but I use that image just to make the point that you don't need to go overboard here. You need to think about the different surfaces you've got and how to protect them so you don't damage them. So the way you clean your toilet bowl, I know you know this, but just to make the point, the way you clean your toilet bowl is not the way you clean a screen of an expensive bit of equipment in the gym. And then thinking about contact times. So we've mentioned that a bit before as well, but you've got to give the product long enough to do what it needs to do. So some things you could do to make life a bit easier. So I think the main thing to say is you need to do the best possible deep cleaning. So I like this quote from Benjamin Franklin: "An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure." In other words, if you get everything up to the right standard, so it's new, you can keep it that way. So you're preventing a problem rather than trying to cure a problem. And now is the time. You've never had a better opportunity to get your clubs as clean as possible. Because nobody's in there, and you've got as much time as you need in terms of 24 hours a day between now and the 4th of July. I would invest in some equipment here, and you're going to see a massive return on investment. So I'm not saying buy this equipment, but just as an example here, to do 100 square meters, they would say, this company is saying, to mop it is going to be 55 minutes, to use one of their machines is going to be 5 minutes. So because we're going to have to be doing more cleaning, more thorough, more effective cleaning, we can't necessarily just throw labour at that. We can't be throwing 100 people into the cleaning team. Commercially that won't work. So some investments targeted and with proof that they're going to actually work in equipment, I think is an easy, quick win. But you are going to need some extra manpower. So most clubs, this is an example of a private club that had about 180 hours a week, and it was pretty grossy, to be honest. They had janitorial cleaning during the day, but therefore they weren't really doing any proper cleaning, if that makes sense. The cleaning staff were probably not really cleaning. They were picking up towels and doing things like that, janitorial work. We had a look at that, and we calculated that they would need probably 2 additional FTE people to make that work. So that's quite a big cost, 2 FTE staff. But that is kind of typical, I would say, across the industry, because what's happened in the past is that we have valued cleanliness. So every operator would say cleanliness is important to us. But what we've ended up doing, and this isn't just in leisure, this is in retail and hospitality and other sectors as well, because they would all say the same: cleanliness is important. But we've underinvested in cleaning, and therefore we've got this kind of mismatch, a bit like the members saying cleanliness is important, but we're not delivering it. And it's kind of the same thing from a business perspective as well. 2 cleaning staff is 40k a year. That's quite a big investment. And it could be even bigger. Some of these big facilities, cleaning is a science. It's going to take, if you've got 10,000 square meters versus 2,000 square meters, it's going to take you about 5 times as long to do it. It's just a mathematical calculation. Again, test to create proof. Now, we don't want to be in this scenario, but just imagine if you were having to stand up in court because somebody, one of your team members contracted the virus, and there was an investigation, and it was felt that you hadn't put in place enough of a rigorous process. And if you're saying, well, I bought a disinfectant and we used it, or my cleaning company did a deep clean for me, or I cleaned and then I got a company in to do some sanitizing, fogging, how comfortable would you feel versus saying, well, here was our plan, we did a deep clean using this and this, then we tested it, and then we disinfected using this product, and we allowed this amount of time, and then we tested it again, and then we tested weekly, and it's about that proof that you're doing what you say you're going to do, and that's not only useful in respect of any legal issues you might have, but actually it's just useful to help you sleep at night, because my biggest concern in this field of cleanliness and hygiene is that people will look at it as a given. They'll think it's easy, they won't put enough diligence into doing it properly, and they'll think that they've covered themselves, they've done it properly, whereas actually under any kind of scrutiny, they just simply won't have done it. So you guys, the fact you're on this call suggests that you want to do it properly, which is great. So you're a step ahead of many people, but this is the sort of thing you need to be thinking about. And then something else you might consider, there are some products in the market which give this kind of residual protection, so they could be used for touch points, for example. So there's one that we've been using, it's used on the underground, and it gives a 30-day sort of mechanical kill action against pathogens. So you still need to sanitize touch points as you go, but if you cast your mind back to the rigorous cleaning and disinfection, that then needs to be a monthly thing, whereas if you're not doing this, you maybe need to do that more frequently. So that's something that could be something to think about as a win. And then, as we touched on earlier, get rid of the members that are working against you. So, I realise that this is not an easy decision for anybody to make, kicking a member out. But I do think if you've got, if you've got 90% of members that are doing what they need to help you deliver the right outcomes and encourage more people to join and so on and so forth, and you've got 10% that are a problem and causing you grief, in the long run, you might be better off getting rid of those 10%. And it won't be 10%; it'll be 1 or 2. But I think if you're allowing this kind of non-compliance to be the norm, then it will be the norm, and therefore you're just not going to be able to maintain these outcomes that that ukactive have set out. So how could I help? Basically, we're doing 4 things, I suppose. Just check there's something in the chat here before we get into this. Will the presentation be available? Yes. So basically, I'm recording this and I'm going to upload it onto YouTube and our website, and I'll send you all a copy of the slides as well. So yes, very, very much available. In terms of so what we're doing, we've got four things we can help you with. The first thing to say is, we can help you with the whole of the club in one way or another, not just the floors. We're doing free educational content like this, and like the SimSpa thing I did earlier. We're able to help with, at the other end of things, sending our team in to do a proper deep clean and disinfection of the whole place. And then we've got a couple of things we can do in between, including the sort of entry level, I suppose, would be us putting together a bespoke plan for you to implement. So in other words, we'll actually use that rotas model, and we'll look at the equipment you've got and the chemicals you've got and so on and so forth, and say, right, use this here and allow 10 hours for that, use that there with that bit of equipment and allow 2 hours for that, and so on and so forth. So quick recap then. The minimum expectation according to ukactive is a disinfected club throughout, so that's quite a heavy burden. So you've got to do a deep clean, because you can't disinfect until you've done that. You've got to have some proof that what you're doing is working, and then you've got to stay on top of it. So regular cleaning, disinfection, and daily sanitisation. Engage members to help, and the communication piece, I think, is critical in this. As we talked about before, consider removing those that don't, even if temporarily. And I think get a standard that you can maintain. If we were relaunching into every single club being new, then that would be quite easy. It's easy to stay on top of something that's new. But we're not in that situation, so we've got to try and get things up to the right standard, and then it's much easier to keep them that way. And then feel free to use any of the methodologies and the models that I've set out. Rotas, I think, is a great one to try and help you. So what it's all about? It's all about being proud of your club and the member experience you're giving. It's about safeguarding your team and safeguarding your members and protecting your reputation. Think about, if somebody contracts the virus, that's obviously the worst case scenario. But what's going to happen if you open and you get 5, 6, 7 people complaining, saying, well, this place is a dump. What have they been doing for the last 3 months when they've been closed? That's going to go like wildfire around social media, and you're going to see fewer and fewer members kind of coming back. So reputational management is key. And that means, being able to sell and retain as many memberships as possible, and making a profit. So open the floor to questions now. We've had a few questions on the chat, so let's run into those. Or if anybody wants to ask any questions by unmuting themselves, feel free. And then if anybody's interested in going into part 2, where we can talk a bit more in detail about how we could help, then let me know. So a couple of questions from the chat. Question here about UV. So UV can be an effective disinfectant, but you have to use it quite strongly to do that. And there would be a number of surfaces that might be not damaged necessarily, but weakened or damaged over time if you carried on doing that again and again and again. Where UV could be very useful is in air conditioning units and things like that, because you can actually kind of treat the air as it's coming through and try to sanitize / disinfect it. So that could be something that would be of use. Somebody's asked about cleanliness inspection survey, and is that something that will be done? I don't think people will do it, as in I don't think the government or ukactive is going to do it, but I think it's something that you could certainly do if you wanted to be very proactive. And again, I do think that trying to measure this and quantify this has to be the way to go, just like your pool balance levels and various other things. You know, you manage your numbers if you're the general manager of a club in terms of your P&L. Why wouldn't you manage your numbers when it comes to the hygiene and cleanliness and safety? There's a point here about equipment providers don't recommend the use of chemicals on equipment. Do I recommend a specific? Sorry, yeah.
That's not quite true.
Okay.
I've had a meeting with Life Fitness, Technogym and Matrix, and they've basically allocated the chemicals that you can use. Mm-hmm. I'm just looking for a copy of it now, and I'll post it into the group for you.
Oh, nice one. Thanks, Craig. Yeah. What I would say on that as a general point is, if you've got any surfaces at all, so, you know, it might be equipment screens, but it could be like soft play areas or upholstery or whatever it might be. As a first point, I would always refer back to the manufacturer's guidance and just check what they say is okay and what isn't okay. Because obviously the last thing you want to do is try to solve a problem by doing something and then cause yourself an even bigger problem. But a word of caution on that would be that I work with a number of floor suppliers, for example, of all different types. And typically the advice they give around cleaning is very generic and very vanilla, shall we say. In other words, you know, it might work in theory, but actually it's mostly designed to not damage the surface rather than be effective in achieving a cleaning result. So just bear those things in mind. Another question here, what should be done with cloths or wipes after use? Do wipes need to be disposed of in a different bin? That's a good question. Let me check on that. I know that if you have a confirmed case of COVID-19, because we've been dealing with some of those, you then certainly do have to dispose of things in a particular way. But I don't think, although I'll check. I'll tell you what, let's put it this way. If you don't hear from me, then you don't need to dispose of them in a different way. But I'll check, and if you do, then I'll let you know in an email to everybody that's attended. But I don't think that if you don't believe or don't know that there's any virus, you know, in the building, I don't think that you need to dispose of cloths and things in a different way. The presentation somebody shared there, I'm not sure what that is. I won't click on that in case it takes me out. Wayne has asked, between gym sessions, would it be best to clean floors as well as touch points and equipment? I'd probably not. I think. I mean, what's the risk of a virus spreading on the floor versus other areas? Much lower in a gym. Maybe a bit different in changing rooms and pool sides because you've got skin to skin contact. But I think we've got to be pragmatic here. Keep your floors clean. But if you're going to start trying to clean every single surface, you know, including all your floors between every class, you're probably not going to have much time left to be running any classes. So I think, you know, all the advice that I'm seeing and I believe is mostly about, you know, staying rigorously on top of the touch points as much as you can, and then the other areas can be dealt with in downtime. They need to be done, don't get me wrong, but there's a lower burden, I would say, on those. The link is about UV, so thanks, Emma, for that.
Thank you.
And then Craig's put in the chat 3 cleaning solutions. Yeah, soap and water, for example, is fine.
And there's also a PDF just been dropped in now, Christian, mate.
Perfect. Okay, great. Lots of good questions there. Any other questions from anybody now? If not, then I'll crack on with part 2. Don't feel like you have to stay because this is me going more into telling you, you know, about what we can do to help you rather than educating you. But if you want to hear that and it might be of use, then let me know. Here's a question. I'd heard that disposable cleaning items had to be placed in a zone and left for 3 days in a red zone. This was given from a health and safety advisor.
Only if they've had COVID.
Yeah, I've heard that some of the retailers were talking about doing that, and I said, well, that seems crazy to me because you don't know what's happened and what hasn't happened. But I think it's only, I think that Craig's right. It's very different in a known case. You know, if you have a known case, you need to be doing everything to the nth degree, and that includes PPE for operatives and all these other things as well. But I don't think that's reasonable or practical to be doing, and I don't think if you look at there is a document on the PHE website, Public Health England website, which is about cleaning in non-healthcare facilities, and it's much less laborious than what you find in a known case, a known infectious case example. Do I recommend the use of gloves when in and around the facility, or would it be best to just wash your hands? Best to just wash your hands, to be honest, because gloves, you know, just like if you're wearing gloves, every time you touch something, you should change your gloves, really. So you may as well just wash your hands. I think gloves would give people maybe a bit of a false sense of security. And yeah, it's not practicable to be wearing them. Obviously, if you're cleaning, that's a different matter. And you need to be checking if you're providing, again, sanitizing wipes for members to use, what the PPE requirements are for those. But I suspect that you can find something that's effective, like you've got at home. If any of you've got kids, you know, that you don't need to wear PPE for. But obviously, if you're doing any proper cleaning, you should be wearing PPE. And I do think that in the past, you know, we as an industry, as have other industries, have been a bit lax about people wearing PPE when cleaning. I think that needs to change as well going forward. Right, well, I'll crack on to part two. Any other questions, keep firing them in, and we'll cover them all. Don't worry about that. This lovely image is is just one of the ones where we've given a changing room a good clean. And that's all the CRAP that came out of the floor. So this is kind of more detail on how we can help, and you'll have seen some images around the types of stuff we do. This is a good example. So thanks for staying. So basically, going to give you a bit of an overview of what we do. I'm going to talk to you about the maintenance model that we work with as well, because yes, we need to get clubs up, and we might be able to help you with that, but also we've got to try and stay on top of it. So in terms of getting things up now, as I say, we've got these 4 offers, and you know, there's a greater investment for greater certainty, as you'd probably expect. Starting with the content stuff, so we're doing webinars like this frequently. We've done the right directions stuff. We've worked with Craig on his excellent webinars. We've done SimSpa today and various other things as well. We've got loads of interviews on our YouTube channel with industry experts like Paul Bedford. Interesting one with Neil Adeboale there, who's an insurance broker, talking about risk management in the leisure sector. And then there's a landing page on our website with loads of information, including FAQs that have come from these sessions as well. So there's plenty of content out there to help educate you. In terms of the entry-level product, basically this is us helping you to put together a methodology bespoke to you to give you the best chance of getting your club up to the right standard before you reopen. So you send us as much information as you can about your club, so the sizes of the areas, some photographs, the products you've got, the equipment you've got, so on and so forth, and we will send you a detailed methodology for each area. So how many hours or days to allow, what product to use from your list, which equipment to use, which pad, which brush, step by step how to do it, etc. Basically to give you the best chance of success. Important to note that we're a service business, so we don't make or sell any products or any equipment at all. So all of our advice is totally unbiased and agnostic. So, you know, if we say use this product because it's because that's the best product that you've sent us of the products available to you. If you want us to recommend a product that isn't on your list, we can recommend some products. But again, we wouldn't make any money from that commercially. So we're not, pointing you down a route because we're getting commission or anything like that. The cost for that is 500 quid basically for that desktop exercise. If you've got up to 5 sites in a group, but if you've got loads more sites, then we can have a chat and see what we can come up with. We don't have many slots left for that because we sort of said we'd start by, we said we'd do 50, and we've sold most of those. And obviously time's running a bit short, but if that's of interest, let me know. At the other end of the spectrum is a full done for you service. So basically, you say, Christian, can you help? Here's my club. What can you do for me? We would send a full team in and do everything for you. So clean everything, disinfect everything, test, certify, etc. So you don't need to worry about it. And we can potentially do that protection thing that we talked about before. And we've ripped off the government graphics here, as many people have as well. And then in between that, we've got a done with you service, a kind of a hybrid. So this is proving quite popular. Basically, we put some stuff into the pot and you put some stuff into the pot. So we put in our experience, our methodologies, our equipment, our chemicals, our processes, and some of our labour, and we take responsibility for delivering the outcome. And what you provide is some of your labour. So basically, our teams do the difficult bits of the club, where the cleaning is very laborious and the experience of doing that is more useful. And then others of our teams work alongside some of your team to do everything else. So we equip your team, we train them, we supervise them, and we work alongside them. So the gym equipment, for example, you don't necessarily need to be paying us to do that in full for you. Of course, we're happy to do it, but actually, with our help, your team are capable of doing that if we give them the right methods and the right tools to do the job. But we are guaranteeing the result because we're overseeing it. We would do electrostatic disinfection, which is like the sort of Ghostbusters thing that you've probably seen photographs of. And we test and certify. I think one of the big benefits is that this will upskill your staff. So the team that you send in are going to really know what to do and how to do this properly going forward, and that means that they can help to maintain the standards going forward. But it's a lower cost than us doing the whole thing, of course, because we're not making a margin on your labour. So to give you an idea on the cost, because obviously that's important for this. So if you thought about an average wet-sized health club, going back to what I said, 6 people for 6 days, for you to deliver that yourself is going to cost you about 6k. So 6 times 125 quid more or less for labour, plus chemical, equipment, PPE, and so on, times 6 days is about 6k. Doing the done with you model, that same place would be about 7.5k, so it is a bit more, but obviously that comes with greater certainty of outcome, and us doing the whole thing is more, again, because again we've got boots on the ground, and if we've got boots on the ground, we need to be making a margin and a profit on that activity. So of course that's going to cost more. But what we are saying to people is, if they are interested in working with us on a maintenance model going forward, we would actually be happy to deliver the done with you service for the same price as it would cost you to do it yourself. So in other words, it'd be cost neutral to do that. And that's all about doing it professionally, guaranteeing the standards, exceeding members' expectations, and getting on top of things and ensuring the viability of your business. In terms of moving forward and maintenance, so we've got a product or a service called CHAMP, which is another acronym, so Cleaning, Hygiene, and Anti-Slip Maintenance Plan. And basically what that means is that every 6 months we come in and we blitz the barefoot and the wet areas of your clubs, because they're the hardest areas to maintain. They're the most important areas in terms of where members perceive cleanliness being both critical but also typically not very good. There's risks of slip, but also the cleanliness and hygiene risks are more acute in those areas. So we come in and bring those all up to the best possible standard, and then again test and certify, and that means that you don't have to worry as much about trying to maintain those areas, and we would give you advice on how to do that maintenance. So basically this is kind of what it is, you know, it's getting up to standard. It's going to dip down a little bit through cleaning, but never to a standard that's below what's acceptable, and then every 6 months we come and top you up again. Again, a typical wet facility like that one we mentioned, to come in twice a year and do all of that is something in the region of about 10K. Going back to what we said about adding in a couple of cleaners, where we have done this for clients in leisure centres before, what we found is that they don't then need to add cleaning staff on. So we typically say, look, why don't you add about 3 hours a day of additional cleaning just for these areas, and then the rest, because most areas of clubs other than these barefoot areas are typically all right, but get us in twice a year, and obviously the cost of that versus getting 2 staff is significantly cheaper. So overall, there's work to be done, as you've probably seen from some of the photographs, and I think you'll know from your experience. But I think it's, you know, it's a good opportunity, a really good opportunity for the industry to drive best practice and to give a much better customer experience than we've had before. It's all about meeting these minimum standards that ukactive are requiring anyway. So let's try and get it done, and so we can operate safely, safeguard your members and staff, but also protect your reputation and ensure the success of your company. So that's how we could help. If it's at all of interest, I suggest we have a chat this afternoon, given you know, we're only a couple of weeks away now and we are getting quite full. So we do have some capacity left over the next few weeks, but not a huge amount. If somebody said, can you do 100 sites? We probably couldn't. We might be able to squeeze it in somehow, but I don't know how I'd do it. But we couldn't probably do that. But you know, we can certainly do individual sites or a few sites. But obviously, the sooner we can get that programmed in, the better. There are my contact details, and that's it from me. Happy to take any more questions if anybody has any, or if not, then thank you for your attention, and I hope that was interesting and valuable. And if there's anything else I can be helping you with, please let me know.